Well, it's official. The rumors are true. Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter. He has offered to purchase the social media company for $54.20 a share, or about $43 billion, saying that the site needs to be transformed privately because it can neither thrive nor serve free speech in its current state. And this comes about a little over a week after first revealing a 9.2% stake in the company, and with the news that Musk declined to join the board. So now I guess we know why.
In a letter to Twitter chairman Brett Taylor, Musk said, quote, "I invested in Twitter as I believe in its potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe, and I believe free speech is a societal imperative for a functioning democracy. As a result, I'm offering to buy 100% of Twitter for $54.20 per share in cash."
Wow.
Yeah. So,
big news. So some people on Twitter were pointing out that it was worth more. It was worth $70 per share a year ago. But obviously that's a year ago.
That's how you get rich. You buy one and flow.
Worth that ever again. So I think this is a pretty strong offer for the moment. So they absolutely they're required to consider it. They wouldn't be acting in Twitter's best interest if they didn't. And people are kind of. So what I'm seeing on Twitter is a lot of people sharing the view that I feel that this is kind of exciting. Elon Musk at least has articulated a vision of Twitter that is probably closer to mine own heart, one where the moderation of political speech is less aggressive, and there's more of a kind of free speech dynamic going on. Then I see other people freaking out that, oh no, he's going to let Trump back on or something, which he very well might do, and might be the correct thing to do if he took control of Twitter. Yeah. But it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't obviously care about Trump coming back on the platform, and if he plans to run Twitter as he says he is in terms of the investment in free speech, I think that would be fine. I'm a little curious about why there's so much confidence that Elon Musk, given the way he's historically behaved on Twitter, given how sensitive he is sometimes about interacting with people on Twitter, given his kind of generalized temperament and some of the choices that he has made in terms of how he's lived his life and moved his money, that is actually what's going to happen, and that he's not going to use it to continue to make his own little fiefdom the way that he's trying to make this guy in all of his space his own fiefdom. Why are people, is there any concern from either of you that he might not actually be willing to follow through on his promises to make Twitter more free?
I think that there's always a risk, right? That when somebody gets into that position, for one, it's a lot harder to run a social media platform than to just say free speech for everybody. I mean, we know that you can't really have carte blanche free speech. You've got to say, well, we can't have anything that's going to be, illegal, like calling for violence against somebody, or doxing. Maybe doxing will become something you can't do on Twitter. Obviously, uprisings. There's things that you have to be cautious about when you're running a social media platform. But look, I mean, better than the alternative. I think it's worth a shot. Let the guy run it. Let's see what happens. It's better than what's going on right now. And that is that the platform is just run by pretty much one side. You can't say a lot of things on Twitter. They've banned, the former president of the United States. To me, how can we even pretend to be a functioning democracy when we've literally banned the former president of the United States? That's just bizarre. If you don't like what he says, don't listen to him. Don't vote for him. It's pretty simple. But no, I think it's worth a shot. And by the way, this is an enormous amount of money, $43 billion. Maybe he could even up it a bit. That guy, Elon Musk, has nearly as much money, just to put this in perspective, as Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates combined.
And that's what's so concerning, Kim. I'm just curious, because we understand that there's an alignment of interest between kind of liberal politics and the people who run a lot of these tech sites, right? And that's how we get stuff like Donald Trump being banned and the Hunter Biden story being wiped from the site and all of those kinds of things. But it's not like Elon Musk doesn't have his own interest as someone whose wealth is kind of historically unprecedented and who has plenty of reasons to want to have certain kinds of information flowing or not flowing on the internet.
But here's the viewpoint of the kind of regime that runs Twitter right now. So Max Boot is a columnist for the Washington Post. He was like a neoconservative and then a never Trump, and now just kind of exists in the resistance Democrat side. He writes on Twitter, I am frightened by the impact on society and politics if Elon Musk acquires Twitter. He seems to believe that on social media anything goes. For democracy to survive, we need more content moderation, not less. And so that's the view of the people who run it right now.
Exactly.
That your ability to speak
and
share things should be further constrained. That's the governing ethos right now. So, which is one I disagree with and one I don't want for the company. So I'm sure, of course, Elon Musk could screw it. Anyone could screw it up.
But the difference is that
now.
Elon Musk is one person with unprecedented wealth and power, as opposed to a potentially diversified board of people in joint control that at least would have multiple opinions jockeying for primacy. And I'm not saying it's ideal, but my instinct is always going to be for a more democratic setup than a more autocratic setup. And I'm with you. I'm hoping and praying for a benevolent ruler in Elon Musk. If it comes to that, I'm just a little bit more skeptical, I guess, than you guys might be on whether that's going to be the case.
It's terrible right now. I mean, it just sucks. So anything, I mean, for that type of attitude that Robbie just shared with us, that is so alarming. And that's coming from somebody working for Jeff Bezos, by the way, who owns the Washington Post. So, are all the writers at Washington Post worried because when Jeff Bezos bought it, so I understand that there is this fear and maybe this hesitancy, but the reality is that, if you're willing to work for and read the Washington Post under Jeff Bezos, I don't understand what the difference really would be with Twitter, except that if Elon Musk is saying, I'm going to promise that this is going to be more of a free speech platform, and if he doesn't uphold that, then people will just boycott the thing. I mean, people will just say, hey, you turned and you're no longer, I mean, he doesn't want to, one person also doesn't want to end up being hated by the masses. And he would be hated by the masses if he
And by the way, Brianna, something that I think is true that nobody wants to acknowledge, the greatest gift anyone could give to Democrats would be to bring Donald Trump back onto Twitter right now. It would be a net benefit for Democrats to have Trump tweeting every day.
But you guys know I'm not arguing about Trump. This point that you just brought up, Kim, I don't know. I'm concerned that there is this belief. I totally agree with you about Max Boot, but in the newspaper context, there are other Washington Posts. There are a diversity of newspapers, not as many as there used to be. That's a problem. The idea of defecting from Twitter, people have had issues with Twitter for a long time now. But the problem is that some of these outlets like Twitter and Facebook, these platforms, don't have duplicates in the world in the same way that some of the media class does. And that is part of their charm. That is part of the whole magic of these, is that everybody is in the same place. And I think that part of the concern here is exactly how difficult it will be to set up an alternative and flee Twitter if it actually does become more restrictive.
I mean, of the major, there's Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and some other things, and actually right now, and I like the idea that there are different companies, and I actually think if the policies were more different between them, something we might figure out what we like best. Their policies aren't all that discordant because they have very similar kind of ideologies in how they're governed. If now Twitter actually has a very different ideology, I think that might be good for society. That might, we might figure something out like, oh yeah, that was a better idea that Twitter's doing, or no, that's actually, that's not good. This kind of view of content moderation doesn't work. We would actually get to see that with someone who thinks very differently in charge of one of these companies.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think he can make it worse.
I mean, he could just delete it, and would that be the end of the world? Maybe not.
For some of us, it was. For journalists, Twitter is so important. I feel like my whole career wouldn't have existed without it. It used to be this democratizing platform.
But it is important. It's important for me, right? It's where I see what people are talking about. It has important news gathering value, but it also has news warping value, right? It causes journalists to think that some stories are way more important than they are. I mean, I think it's been unhealthy for the Democratic Party. This is obviously not making the Democratic Party healthier is not a top concern of mine, but that it has mutated and warped and affected the priorities of young staffers who staff Democratic campaigns because they pay way too much attention to Twitter, which is not to say Twitter isn't important. It's very important because the things that political staffers think are important, but they're so not reflective of the rest of the country, and I think it's caused a lot of people who work in the party to miss that.
Well, I would be much more concerned, Bree, if Elon Musk were, let's say, a big conservative guy, And then he says, oh, yeah, I'm going to take it and finally, like how Trump was trying to do with his Truth Social or something like this, where they say, okay, I'm going to create this and it's going to be finally free for everybody, because conservatives are being censored. But Elon Musk is a libertarian guy. He's not either left or right. He gets smeared by both sides and he doesn't fit into any box. So I think look, I hate the fact also that a billionaire has to come in and rescue us and give us back our free speech. That's not what a democracy is. But better to have the billionaire and the wealthiest one in the world at that, wanting to give us that free speech and democracy than to want to take it away.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see if the benevolent billionaire, this is the world's first benevolent billionaire. I hope you guys are right.
What about Bruce Wayne? Tomorrow on Rising, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and author of Hacking Darwin, Jamie Metzl will join us to argue why we should still seek out the unanswered questions of the origins of COVID.
And The Lever's Andrew Perez will be here to break down the long parade of ex-military officials turned defense consultants invited on to endorse various degrees of intervention in the war in Ukraine.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you guys never miss any content. And, of course, those of you who like to listen on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. So be sure to download us there and listen your heart's desire. Right? All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.